Hey guys, Lantern here, bringing you Zoo and its matchups against other archetypes. Today I'm going to be doing a little weird one for you guys. I'm going to be doing how Zoo plays against rogue decks. Rogues are something to consider when, well, maybe not when running a gauntlet, but definitely something to consider while deck building, as well as when just considering what you're sort of what you got to do. And the reason why you got to consider it is because there's always going to be some weird deck that someone's going to bring to a tournament, whether it's just like some guys who actually brewed a very cool or innovative new list, and you're just get paired against them, and you've got to figure out how to beat them, even though they're good players with a meta deck, or they're just a random player that's like, oh well, you know, my spider's deck is gonna win this whole tournament, and you're like, well, maybe not, but your deck isn't tuned to it because that's actually one of the advantages of running a rogue deck is no one's really packing specific hate for that archetype. So who knows, sometimes a spider deck may be able to slink by a win on you just because you had no way to deal with their, I guess, reach dudes. Whatever. So you gotta keep in mind that there are, especially in Modern where the card pool is ginormous, you gotta consider the fact that there's one or two strategies that may just ruin your day. One that I want to make a note that people on MTG Salvation have been using to some good success, and I was making some videos on it for a while too. The 8-rack deck. The 8-rack deck preys on decks that do not know what's happening. If you don't have like a Leyline of Sanctity in your sideboard, or you don't go fast enough, you're pretty much shit out of luck. Since it rips your hands apart. So, again, there's these weird decks that are just going to attack from all sorts of angles. And some meta decks as well, like maybe a deck that's pretty much all wipe decks. One of my favorite stories is me and a guy who goes on MTG Salvation as Mewing Loki. We built a deck back in early Innistrad days that was nothing. We called it Super Friends Arch Enemy, which was Legion of Doom. It was nothing but Planeswalkers and Jund colors and board wipes. Now this is right before the whole gifts or unburial rights stuff happened in Standard at that point. So there's only aggro decks. It was just red deck wins everywhere. And so when you had a deck that was nothing but board wipes and just really grindy, poke you to death, things, you can still win. And we would always win just because no one could deal with the fact that they were trying to do hex-proof creatures or aggro, and we were just wiping the board every turn, letting Planeswalkers do virtual CA. Things like that exist, where people will look at the meta and find a way around it and attack it. Wafatafa Control, for example, while being a very good control deck, is a meta deck. It's not necessarily a reactive control deck as you would think of Draw Go normally. It's still proactive in the fact that all of its burn spells can be used to kill you eventually. Although I've seen more Wafatafa controls win on the back of Celestial Colonnade. It's just burn spells, and the burn spells that like draw a card are important to it because it's how do you put it? It's necessary in a world of creatures. So even that is meta tuned, and at one point was a rogue deck. But I wanted to show you guys. I went on Cockatrice and tried to find the weirdest matchups I possibly could to bring you guys, because rogue decks are a real thing and can just randomly take victories because you have absolutely no clue what to do. So basically, what I'm going to talk about here is how Zoo deals with decks that do things and leave you kind of going like scratching your head saying what the fuck is going on. And the way that Zoo does it mostly is it reverts to its default plan, which is blindly race as fast as possible. You don't really know what you're doing, and hell, you could be making mistakes, but as long as you're going fast and putting a clock on the game, you still might have a chance of killing him before he combos out. Game 1 at this point during rogue matchups become less of killing your opponent as fast as possible, although that's still the main game plan. It's also you need to take a little bit longer while killing them as fast as possible on your turns and on their turns. Really take half a second to see what's going on and try to see if you can figure out the pieces of the puzzle before you get to sideboarding. There are random things in your sideboard that just may help out against general blanket strategies. For example, Pillar Flame's very good against things like recursive creatures. Torpor Orb is good against sort of decks that just might have ability triggering that causes them to do some weird combo win. Your Graveyard Hate and your Artifact Hate are always good. They are just so cover all that you might be able to have a shot at it. Kitchen Finks is also really good against things like board wipes, as well as the life gain might be relevant against like a combo deck. Boros Charm has a lot of different abilities that could be relevant against a combo deck. So Path to Exile being normal removal is very good against random decks that might need key creatures for it to win. So your game 1 is going to be about trying to figure out what the hell is even going on, which is basically what this game 1 is going to be for this deck. And that being said, you still I usually as an aggro player, and I've been playing Zoo forever, figure out what to do in my turn in about like 10 seconds. It's not that hard. Usually in aggro, your game plan is I'm going to turn dudes sideways. I'm going to let you do the thinking. You tell me if you've figured out a way to lose or win. And that's sort of the game plan of Zoo. So if you have that, take about a half a second just to analyze the board. Don't just blindly go fast. You want to go fast, but you want to also take your time so you know what's going on. Now, for the benefit of this viewing and this replays, we can see what his hand is. While he plays things, especially mono green, I usually say like, oh well, it's got to be elves because I can't really think of any other mono green other than Stompy. That exists. So let me just tell you what was going on in my head, and you can put the pieces together. What's going on in his hand? I keep this hand because it's got a bunch of removal spells. It's got a Goyf that gets bigger on removal spells. It's got a Curt Ape. So here we go. We go ahead and we just say, yep, there's a Curt Ape. We got ourselves a little monkey. It's going to be 2/3 and eventually kill you. And I don't know what he's playing. He's doing a Search for Tomorrow, so I'm like, okay, I'm going to guess this is, how do you put it? I'm going to guess this is Scape Shift. Scape Shift, Search for Tomorrow is usually a very fast Scape Shift is what it generally is. Which then it means, alright, my job is to race. There's very little chance when he's hitting me for like 36 damage or some ridiculous amount that Scape Shift does that Lightning Helix is going to save my ass like it could in terms of Storm. So I'm going to go ahead and just probably throw the burn to the face as fast as possible. But I do have a little bit of time. Yes, he might have board sweepers, but if he Pyroclasms next turn, then my Goyf does not go to the graveyard because Pyroclasm resolves and goes to the graveyard prior to the damage getting done. Static ability allows him to be a 2/3, and he survives it. So I figure if he bolts it, well, I've got nothing else better to do, so it doesn't really make a difference. But he puts out this Heart Expedition. Heart Expedition tells me I have absolutely no clue what's about to happen. So I should be just on my tippy toes. He could be some kind of ramp deck, a stompy deck. He could be a Primeval Titan deck. Or it could be, I still think he's on the Valakut plan, but he's like old school Valakut from Standard, from Zendikar. I don't really know. So I've got to just make a guess here. I say, well, my Goyf is going to be huge by the end of this because, I've just gone ahead and burned him just so I can get some extra damage in there. Because now we're off to the races, really, and I don't see any good shots for me to run out my Helix here. Now I have a choice. I can Pillar Flame this Sakura Tribe Elder on my main phase just to get it out of the way, and that's what I'm gonna do. The reason why I'm gonna do that is because I'd rather him not block my Tarmogoyf with it. I'd rather just get down for the damage. And Tarmogoyf's not going to grow with Sakura Tribe Elder. But I can say he's either going to sack it. And he does end up sacking it when I do the Pillar of Flame, which allows Tarmogoyf to grow. But it gets him another land. It's a tippy-toe kind of thing. I'm giving them the choice to let my Tarmogoyf not be huge, or to get their land. And since I saw that he had the Heart Expedition, I figured he was going to get the land, so he could sack the Heart Expedition. And that's fine here. So my Tarmogoyf is ginormous. I can't remember what I used to call when they get the 5-6, because I had some funny names for when they get... I think Super Saiyan Tarmogoyf is what I used to call him. Or Captain Planet Tarmogoyf, one of those kinds of deals. And he goes ahead and kills my color screws me off of white, which is not a problem here because I've got a Pillar of Flame to deal with the acidic slime, and then I even draw another land that's going to be able to deal with the just so that I can get white if I ever needed to. But I'm going to Pillar of Flame that thing, get it out of here, so that way I'm still going to be hitting for damage, and I don't have the Death Touch kill my Tarmogoyf. I'm going to leave this uncracked, and you may be like, well, that's not a smart move. You'd rather draw Burn or something than land. And yes, that's true, but even if it's a 1% chance, it's not worth me being color screwed and drawing a Helix and having nothing to do with it when he's got that Tectonic Edge ready for some damage. Now he could, in theory, Eternal Witness here onto his. Oh, he can't even get the thing because I Pillar of Flamed it. Haha! Pillar of Flame being more awesome than usual. So I think he ends up deciding that he's gonna just take out my mana left and right, and hope that will be enough to really slow me down. I suppose he still puts out a blocker and goes down to 1 life. On the next turn, but maybe if he does that and then draws like an acidic slime to kill my Tarmogoyf, he may be in the clear. It's still pretty much not going to happen. He picks up the Tectonic Edge so that way he can sort of screw me, but there we go. Oop, look at that. We got a 3rd land, so really killing extra lands not necessarily the best thing to do against this deck, especially since this deck functions at 2 lands, is prime at 3 lands, and I was holding a land anyways. So here we come in. There's no way he can block correctly and win. So I've been told game 2. Let me see if this is a different deck. Yeah, so he asks about why Pillar, and that is true. Pillar is counter initiative towards Sphinx, towards Goyf. But there's enough things that Pillar hits that I need to hit. That it's worth the sort of weirdness that it is, and it's very cheap burn, and it actually does play well with Goyf because although it doesn't put a creature into the graveyard, it does put a sorcery into the graveyard, something his deck sorely lacks. And this is going to be a super quick game. I thought he was just a mana ramp and kill land deck. Now I'm on the idea that he's just trying to bloat his mana to pay for the bloated land destruction spells to be a really bad land destruction deck. Turns out, while that may or may not be true, I guess he's got a giant worm here to eventually kill me, right? while searching his library, he can play it. Huh? That's funny. So you can go ahead and do that, and then like rampant growth, and then play it off of the rampant growth. That's really funny. How much does it cost? I'm just discovering what his deck does for the first time. 7. Okay, so he needs to get a lot in there to do it. Play it off of like a free search for tomorrow or something. I figure I've got the race here. I'll outrace his land destructions, which is the big reason why I'm doing what I'm doing here. But I totally fall for the fire spout here. And he fire spouts right now and wipes my board out, and sort of leaves me really sad, and leaves him with a creature and a way to get more mana. And I'm like, I don't have anything in hand really to race for it. I could draw something, but if I draw a burn spell, it's still pretty crappy for me. So this is not good for me. I'm going to go ahead and draw some cards because I'm like, I got to concede. And I've got nothing. I basically draw a big fat nothing. The next one's a little longer. I get a hand that starts out with a experiment 1, but no way to cast really anything else reliably, so I push it gone. I think, all right, well, and sometimes I look quick at my mana, and I'm like, oh, okay, I still got Loomline mana, and I can eventually get a red mana for Boros Charm. And I'm wrong, because we don't have perfect mana in Modern, which is sad. So I end up not being able to use Loomline. But I can still get access to red-green mana, and green is the thing I'm going to need anyways. And after seeing that sweep, Boros Charm looks very good right now, even if I have to wait a little bit. So we're going to go ahead and pass the turn with 0 cards in play. A really great place you want to be with Zoom. Not really. But he's going to dirtle around because he's a ramp deck for a while. So I figure if he's dirtling, I got some time. And I got a Curdate, which is a great play for right now. Basically, this just makes it look like I was on the play. I'm sorry, I was on the draw. And then I draw the necessary second land, which could blow if he starts blowing my lands up, but, I mean, he's still a little bit away from blowing all my lands up. So right now, we're going to go ahead, and I want to still have protection for Boros Charm, but I figure he's not necessarily going to go after Boros Charming to sweeping my board right now, because I've only got 2 creatures out. So I feel like I'm pretty safe. And if he decides not to sweep here and plays something to block, then I am about 90% sure that he does not have a sweep in hand. And he does. He ends up putting Circumstralum, which is the more castly costing one. So I figure, okay, he's basically just going to block here because he doesn't have the sweep yet. So I could risk putting out a Flint Hoof Boar here, but once I got the extra mana, it's better that I put the Loomline out, because I still have the way to Boros Charm, should I need to stop it. And he does end up drawing the Fire Spout, which is what he wants to do. He wants to Fire Spout here because he's got a juicy 3 targets he can hit. And he's going to be like, yeah, Boros, or he's going to go like, yeah, Fire Spout. Good luck. And I'm like, that's fine. And I made sure to tap, this one rather than leave this guy cracked. Because, one, it's better to have it come into play tapped if I need to. But also, because I wanted to lure out the Fire Spout and make it seem like I don't have it. And he already expects it. He sees the Boros Charm's about to happen, and now he's upset about the Boros Charm. I'm like, that's okay. So he's going to put out a blocker. And this is going to sort of read that he does not have another sweep spell. Or he's out of color screwed because he's only got 1 red. Here, since I see he's got the blocker, I'm just going to go ahead and be aggressive. Should he decide to wipe my board, that's fine. I feel like it's going to bring him down to a low enough number that with my Flint Hoof Boar and my Tarmogoyf, I will be able to deal with the fact that he's going to sweep the board again. He ends up putting out stuff which is teleprompting me that he's got no way to sweep again. I end up drawing another Boros Charm. I'm like, all right, we're gonna play conservatively then. That's fine. He's gonna do the blocks. He's gonna do them blocks. Go ahead and take 4, which is bringing him down to enough that even with a hasty dude, I might be able to win. Theoretically, I could have Flint Hoofboard and played it a little bit more aggressive, bringing him down to 4 life and then just Boros Charming him to death. But I figured, why risk it? I've got the win next turn, anyways. This is the more conservative way to win. So he's gonna Fire Spout and he's gonna play it, and I'm gonna go ahead and Boros Charm it, which is causing him to rage. I'm sure it is. Later on, he will tell me that he had he sided in 13 board wipe spells. Sometimes you still don't see your board wipes, no matter how much you side in. Which is why I'd rather than have redundancy, I'd rather have things that do a bunch of different blanket statements here. So it's just since I'm the one who's going to be having the proactive game state. So here I'm just going to flinty and hasty with the flinty and do exacts. It's going to end up, he's going to be able to block the big ones. He's still going to be hit for 7 by 2, 2, and 3. So, yep, there's no way to win. It's the end of the game. He's looking for what he could do. There's Oblivion Stone, and let's just skip him going absolutely nuts. This is what happens when people rage. They don't really know what to do. So yeah. Boros Charm is definitely a good reason to have white. It saved my ass here. Especially if you really did have 13 freaking sweepers. So you saw that again. That deck, I don't know what's happening with it. I decide to just be aggressive. After I find out his game plan is to wipe the board and blow up my lands and then eventually win with whatever way he was going to win. I didn't know he was going to win through the worm, but he was going to win through the worm. My sideboard plan was strictly to put some kitchen finks in the main board, just to deal with the fact if he wipes my board, I would have a 2-1 still. Life gain didn't matter. Redundancy or recursion is what mattered there. Boros Charms, because Boros Charms nullify board wipes, especially red board wipes. So we mold, but we've got ourselves a good curve. The Loom Lion into Burning Tree Emissary into Tarmogoyf. Seems good. Here I didn't know what he was playing. I still kind of don't know what he's playing. This is the first time I'm reviewing what the other opponent was doing and seeing what's in their hands, so maybe I can tell you what's going on. I don't know whether this deck was some kind of... oh, wait, it was a Necrotic Ooze deck is what it was. Some kind of Necrotic Ooze. And if you guys don't know what Necrotic Ooze does, it's a 4/3 that gains all the abilities that are in the graveyard, basically, more or less. So you're trying to combo out with Necrotic Ooze, doing some infinite combo with stuff that's in the graveyard, and you're very willing to let your guys die in the process, so that you get them into the graveyard as you're waiting to get an Ooze or something. I believe one of the big things to do here is cause an unlimited infinite untap combo, where you can untap your creature as much as you want through like Devoted Druid. Get unlimited amounts of manas and unlimited card draws. As far as what he does with all that stuff yet, I don't know. Maybe unlimited pings? I have no clue. Necrotic Ooze decks are weird. I don't like them because all I gotta do is graveyard hate and you usually win the game. Or, just kill Necrotic Ooze. That's also a good idea. So, I'm just going to play my hand. I'm going to race. That's how we're going to do this. I don't know what he's doing. I see a Devoted Druid. I know there's an interaction with Devoted Druid and some porcupine creature. I can't remember what it's called. Released on the same set than that. That causes an unlimited mana and unlimited pump spell. So I don't know what is happening. I am clueless. But I know it's some kind of combo deck. And when in doubt, race as hard as you can. So he's in Birds of Paradise here. He's going to put out Civilized Scholar. I guess I think he's just mana ramping into something. Maybe he's with the Civilized Scholar. Maybe he's looking for Porcupine. Who knows? I get a Boros Charm. Boros Charm's nice. I can use it instant speed to finish him off if I have to. I can use it sorcery speed since he's technically tapped out. He ends up blocking everything I own with his untapped ways. He's trying to get all that stuff into the graveyard for Necrotic Ooze. I don't know that yet. But he's going to only take 2, bringing him down to 10 life. If I Boros Charmed him, he would go down to 6 life. While 6 life is nice for him to be at, not necessarily game winning, so I'm going to hold on to the Boros Charm just in case he's got something to use here, like I don't know, if he's got some kind of like board wipe spell like Damnation, so I can Boros Charm it. I think that's maybe his plan, since he was very willing to trade off his combo creatures to block. Bloodline Keeper. That's kind of funny. You can transform your Necrotic Ooze with the Bloodline Keepers in the graveyard, but it doesn't do anything because you're not transforming. You're transforming Bloodline Keeper because that's what it says, not Necrotic Ooze. That's just kind of funny. I don't know. I don't know if it does anything, but it's funny. So I'm attacking all out here. I draw a Lightning Helix. I feel like I can Lightning Helix the guy to the face if I need to. I can also kill his ooze. He has access to some kinds of mana, I suppose, with the Devoted Druid's abilities. He's down to 1, so what we're going to do here is we're going to just, rather than point it at Necrotic Ooze and say, maybe you can win the game, maybe you can't win the game with Necrotic Ooze, I'm just going to go ahead and point the Lightning Helix to your face and say, do you have any way to counter that? If you don't, you lose the game. And he doesn't, so really nothing he can do here. Lightning Helix, and that'll be the end of that. So now I know he's a Necrotic Ooze deck. So what do I side in against him? Torpor Orb doesn't really matter here because it's not triggered ability, it's activated abilities. Fairy Mactabra, very good here because that woman likes to take things out of the graveyard, which is key for Necrotic Ooze to do stuff. Kitchen Finks, not needed. Solid Pride Mage, I didn't see any artifacts or stuff, and I think it's mostly creature-based because of Necrotic Ooze. Boros Charm helps me go faster, but doesn't actually help me, keep things out of there. Path to Exile does get rid of Necrotic Ooze no matter what he does. Maybe if he's got an infinite pump on Necrotic Ooze, it's better. So what I end up doing is I end up taking out, I believe I end up taking out my my Boros Charms and replace them with Fairy Mactabra, and I take out the Rampager and replace it with Path to Exile because this isn't guaranteed removal, and we need removal because this is a combo matchup. And the reason why you keep the Pillar of Flames in there is because the Pillar of Flames has that exile thing. So even if I were to kill one of his mana ramp dudes, I'm denying him the chance to use that with Necrotic Ooze for infinite whatever. And this one's going to be very quick. I think he just realizes there's no way he can outrace me. Let's see what he's got in hand, because I'm interested in looking at his deck. Got the Necrotic Ooze in hand. Birthing Pod. I guess that helps him get Necrotic Ooze pieces as well as Necrotic Ooze itself and putting that stuff into the graveyard. Bloodline Keeper puts a lot of vampires out there. Dryad, I guess, could be sacrificed to Birthing Pod as well as can be a blocker. And actually, yes, I believe since it's a creature tapping that it does, in fact, help Ooze out if it dies. Got another Ooze. Got a tap and draw 3 cards ability. That's really good to discard out of your hand. Devoted Druid. Does Mulligan? I think he mulligans. It's only got 1 land in hand. It's got Summoning Sickness. Okay, so he does mulligan. And we got a some stuff. Yeah, Quill Spike. There you go. That's the the porcupine thing. It's got quills. I don't know why. It's a beast. Not a porcupine. Muscle Hoarder. All right, there's how you do it. You remove a -1/-1/1 counter on it. You can add a mana to your mana pool. That works with the Devoted Druid in order to make infinite mana, and then you can work it with Quill Spike to get infinite pump. And that does a lot of infinite stuff. He's got 2 mana here, but I think he just realizes at the end of this that he can't really outrace me. I give a hand because it's got a Burning Tree Emissary and it's got a Flint Hoofboar and I got a Loom Lion, so it curves. I'm going to have 3 creatures out turn 2, which is nice, and then I can back it up with Helix. We're just going to speed this up because he takes his turn and he passes it with really nothing to do, and I go ahead and Flint Hoof and all that junk because he doesn't have. I check to see if he's got it. He's like, yeah, he can't outrace it, and leaves. That's game 2 of our weird game matchups. Here's another one. I keep this hand because it's got Experiment 1. It's got a Loom Lion. Loom Lion doesn't work super well with Burning Tree Emissary, but what can you do? It will still pump the Experiment 1. Should I draw a Curd Ape or something, it really does not matter that I cannot use Burning Tree Emissary turn 2. I'll use it turn 3, you know? No big. He Birds of Paradise, and the only time I ever really see a Birds of Paradise game turn 1 is against Bant, is against any kind of pod deck, or a weird tempo deck. But it's usually Bant or a pod deck, so I'm basically reading here that he's a pod deck. So against Pod, you generally want to go aggressive. I'd love to burn the guy right away. I can't. When I see a Birds of Paradise, it must die is generally what I consider. Birds of Paradise does things like I've seen it enough in my life that it should stay in the graveyard unless it's on my battlefield, in which case it can stay alive as long as it wants. But I've been the guy who does a turn 1 bird into a turn 2 sword into a turn 3 swing with the sword and kill you. In standard, even. Birds do a lot of things, and the fact that it flies and becomes an invasive creature is something to be aware of. So I don't know what's happening, but I see the Wall of Roots here, and I'm like, oh, okay, it's got to be a pod deck. There is no way that it can be anything else at this point than pod if it's got a Wall of Roots and a Birds of Paradise in play. That makes more sense than anything else does. And I'm prepared for that. I'm gonna be able to deal with this, I think, because I've got Rampager. I can run over one of his walls, or the game's gonna at least go to turn 4. I can also burn him to death if I need to, and let him think that he's got the edge. If I get rid of his mana ramp, he does not have any clear way of being able to go infinite with Kiki Chiki. And there's a dramatic entrance, and dramatically Progenitus enters, and I'm like, well, damn. I don't know what to do here with the turn 3 Progenitus. By modern rules, that's allowed, because he can't win until turn 5. However, you basically won turn 3 because there's nothing I can do. I think maybe I might be able to outrace him. I've outraced Progenitus in Legacy before, so I'm not too scared. I just got to be aware that there's no way I can chump block it because it has protection from everything. There's no way I can try to trample over it or burn it because it's got protection from everything, as well as it being a 10-10, so it's just a little bit out of bolt range. I'm considering my options here. If I swing, he'll eat one of my creatures, and there isn't nothing I could really do. The better option here is just to burn to the face, and maybe I can outrace him if I do this. Be able to Boros Charm with my land next turn, Rampager, for the win if he blocks with something little, not necessarily wall. But I've basically got 2 turns to do it, and I can still do it. 1, 2, 3, or 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. I might be able to outrace him, but he's gonna go ahead and attack, and then just wipe the board with the Pyroclasm, and that kills everything but my Loom Line. There is absolutely nothing I can do. I figure if I top deck burn after that, I might be able to win. I could have grinded out and won, and nothing happens. That's the end of that. So, we go to game 2, and I'm like, alright, game 2, because I don't think you're going to be able to survive a game 2 and 3. I know what he's trying to do. He's a ramp deck that's trying to cheat fatties into play. So what I have to do here, then, is outrace him. Really, that's the only answer I've got. I've got nothing that discards stuff in his hand like Thoughtseize, like Jund does. So my only choice is outrace him. Torpor Orb doesn't really work here because he wins with fatties, not necessarily effects. Graveyard Hate, not doing anything. Kitchen Finks, not doing anything. Qasali Pride Mage could. I don't know if he's trying to cheat with a Birthing Pod or if he's going to try to cheat with like a Quicksilver Amulet, but it's not worth putting in there. Path to Exile, the only fatty I saw him drop right now is a Progenitus who will survive a Path to Exile. Volcanic Fallout could sweep his board, which is good. Keep him from being able to mana ramp into something stupid. Boros Charm does more damage than Pillar Flame does. So, as it stands, I think the best move here is just to get more value for my buck. And I take out 2 Pillar Flames and put in 2 Boros Charms. 2 of these other Pillar Flames could easily become Volcanic Fallout for the board wipe, but I want to see what else he's doing a little bit. I don't think he's got it, because I only saw the mana ramp creatures was a bird and a wall, and Volcanic Fallout isn't necessarily going to do that. But the Pillar of Flame will hit the bird very quickly, so I leave the 2 Pillar of Flames in, but put in 2 extra Boros Charms. It also helps since he had a pseudo board wipe. So I end up keeping this. It's got 2 Burning Trees, an Experiment 1, and a Tarmogoyf. Whether Tarmogoyf pumps the Experiment 1 doesn't really matter here. What really matters is the fact that I'm going to at least be swinging for 6 damage turn 2. Turn 3, I should say. It really depends on what he does. He puts out a Bird of Paradise. It also depends what I draw. If I draw a burn spell, I'm more than willing to use my burn spell and let the Tarmogoyf pump my stuff, which is what I get. I get a Pillar Flames here, so my best plan of attack here is to go Burning Tree, Pillar Flame onto your dude, keep you off from mana, from being able to Dramatic Entrance right away, have this guy be a 2/2, and swing for it. And then next turn I can Tarmogoyf and have him be a 3/3, which is very good. A lot of players also forget that the Pillar Flame exiles the Bird of Paradise, or exiles whatever it kills. Something to note there is that it's mandatory. You can't get away with saying it is not dead, therefore my Tarmogoyf is 3/4. You have to say that your Tarmogoyf is 2/3, because that is exiled. It's already been done, you know? I get another Burning Tree Emissary, which is just gravy. I don't know. You got a lot of Burning Tree Emissaries are going to win you the game, regardless of like what's happening. It's like Deathrite Shaman in that respect. That if you've got 2 Deathrite Shamans on the field and access to doing whatever you do, chances are you're going to win the game. It doesn't necessarily mean that Deathrite Shaman is the best card in the world, but what it does mean is that they just sort of end up winning games. Same deal with Burning Tree. If you've got multiple Burning Tree Emissaries in hand, you'd be hard-pressed to mulligan it, even if you don't have a turn 2 drop. Because, I mean, dropping 3 Burning Tree Emissaries in a row is nothing to cry about, you know? And what he's got here is to put out a land card, channel the Suns a little bit, and go put it into a Maelstrom Angel. The Maelstrom Angel is going to be a 5/5 that cheats fatties into play. He's got nothing cheated to play, but what he does have is a 5/5 blocker that can eventually win. I'm just going to keep swinging. If he decides he wants to block, that's fine. I'm going to bolt it after that, because I'm more worried about the combo. I don't know that he doesn't have anything in hand really worth looking at. Something to note here, if he had red mana up and he had a bolt in hand, something to do is to let him block. Don't declare... Oh, when he declares that as a block, or like if he declared the Burning Tree Emissary as a blocker, and then I went to bolt him, and then he decides he wants to bolt my Burning Tree Emissary in response, what it does is he ends up keeping his creature alive, and I just lost 2 cards for the price of 0. So it's always better to let your end phase happen, let your creature die, then do the bolt, so that way it's too late for him to prevent the creature damage. A lot of people also forget that this wild Noctil regenerates. It's something to keep in mind. It doesn't necessarily make it better than Noctil. However, in the late game, if it's already a 3/3, it is then quote-unquote better than Noctil, because it'll stay a 3/3, even if there's graveyard hate, but also has the ability to regenerate. And a 1/1 is better than nothing, you know? Overall, I still prefer Noctil, because Noctil is a 3/3 no matter what I do, even if I top deck it, or it gets bounced. But Experiment 1 has his reasonings. A lot of people are hating on the new Experiment 1 art. I want to say that I like that art. It makes it look like part fish, part squid, rather than human ooze. And that's okay with me, because I like my animals looking like animals. I don't want zoo starting to be humans. I want zoo to be animals, because that's where the name came from. I still think that Loom Lion and Curd Ape are one of the best creatures you can run. Tarmogoyf is a Ludogoyf. I don't know what that is. I'm about 90% sure it's a beast. Or it's just some kind of, like, muscle ooze. It's like an ooze with muscles, so it's green instead of black? I don't know. He's got nothing. He's drawing lots of blanks. So that's that. Race plan did what it needed to do. You keep removing his key creatures and not let him combo. And a lot of rogue decks are combo-esque. They're not necessarily tempo or board control or mid-range, although they could be. It's just, it seems like combo has a chance of winning out of nowhere, so if you make a rogue combo deck, you have more of a chance. This is still what I would say is a ramp deck, but it's got a combo-esque victory condition. And he's keeping a hand with Progenitus here, and a Domri to sort of maybe find a way to sneak Progenitus into play. And some mana ramp and some walls. It's not necessarily the worst keep in the world. It's got only 2 lands, but with Tribuilder and the wall, it's alright. But we're just gonna go ahead and say, alright, we're just gonna burn here. We're gonna be aggressive as can be. We got some burn backup for anything you drop that could be negative to me, as well as it'll, if not, hell, I'll just speed the game up and win the game faster. That is one of the good things. Zoo is a good deck to use to punish rogue decks. It's not necessarily that it's a good deck to punish combo decks or anything, or rogue combo decks, but what happens is we don't give them a lot of time. We give them about 4 turns to win the game, and if they do not win the game in 4 turns, we're going to win the game, regardless. And if they decide to take longer than 4 turns, they probably die. But also, we punish them with things like burn. We have a lot of access to removal, and we have a lot of access to pressure. If they're not advancing their board state, they are dying. If they're strictly focusing on the combo, then they are dying. It's Jund punishes by not letting them have a good play. Like, it rips things from their hands. We punish them by being an aggro deck or being aggressive and having a threat out as early as turn 1 and forcing them to deal with what's on the board rather than advance their own board state. A lot of combo decks and a lot of rogue decks, and I should say rogue decks, are synergetic. They all have things that help each other and things that are necessary to help each other and to force themselves forward. A good example would be something like the Knights deck. The Knights deck relies on having Knights helping each other out. This deck relies on cards pushing and cheating fatties into play. It can't deal with other things. It's got its own game plan it needs to work with, and it's using all 60 slots to forward its own game plan. On the flip side, Zoo has a core. It has a core of critters that are going to beat your face in. But it also has flex spots, like Burn, or Qasali Pride Mage, for example, or something else, to tune it to the metagame. That's something that most rogue decks cannot do. If you are interested in building a rogue deck, as I used to be, and I still build rogue decks inside, what you really want to do is put a core of your deck together, like a good 20 cards that will win you your game. That is the core of your deck. And the other 10 to 20 cards should be what I like to say is kryptonite. Ways to defeat your meta. That's exactly what for example, what I was saying earlier, exactly what the Legion of Doom deck did. Its core was Planeswalkers, and that there was, at that time, no real good way to remove Planeswalkers sans Beast Within. The other 20 cards were wipe cards, which was killing my meta. It's something to consider. And Zoo still uses that principle too. While its burn spells can be considered hate spells at this point, because it hates on creatures, and that's what Modern's all about right now. So we're gonna go ahead and we're gonna an interesting play here is that I bolt the face rather than bolt the Wall of Roots. So it makes my Tarmogoyf a 4/5 here, killing the Wall of Roots, which is a 0/4 because he used it to cast something. And then play Experiment 1 with my extra mana. There's really, what is he going to do? It's making my Experiment 1 here a 4/4. It's rare to get Experiment 1 up past a 3/3. 3/3 is what this deck is built to make it. Tarmogoyf can do it sometimes, can bring it up to a 4/5. I know Vexing Devil also does it, but Vexing Devil is a one-shot deal, and sometimes you got to use it to bring it to a 3/3. I don't like Vexing Devil. Vexing Devil makes it feel too creature-oriented, too combo-y around Experiment 1. And it's only burn, It's never what you want it to be, and I don't think it's the best for Zoo. I think it's great in Gruul Zoo, don't get me wrong, but I don't think it's optimal. I think it's better in a deck that just wants you to bring your life points down to 0 as fast as possible through spells. And that way you're saying, I have a 4/3 here. You probably sided out most removal because all I'm doing is burning you. If you want him to stay alive, well, he's still going to do damage. Yes, he may die to your removal spell, but why did you keep that removal spell in your deck? Really is what it's saying. He's drawing a lot of bull. Again, it's leave it to rogue decks sometimes. It's just they've got to support their own game plan, right? And it takes too much out of their deck. And then, by the way, that was one of the rare times that he got up to a 5/5. I think that's actually the only time I've managed to get him to 5/5. And so he's dead as hell. Let's show you a rogue deck I've built at some point in time, in order to show you it's got to rely on itself too much. I think 8 rack would be a good one to show. And here's the problem with rogue decks. I think 8 rack is one of the better rogue decks. Hell, I think it's tier 1.5. I think it's better than tier 2, which is where I rack most rogue decks. But let's look at what it's got to do here. It's focused on discard, and it wants to lock you out of the game using a Liliana the Veil. And it wants you to make you discard a constant 2 discard at a time. So either a Liliana the Veil plus a Raven's Crime every turn, or some kind of lock. There's a bunch of mini locks in here, which is one of the reasons why I think this deck is better than most other rogue decks, because it's got redundancy that most rogue decks don't have. But it still has to look at this. We've got 21 spells here that are just single turn discard, because I have to keep them discarding constantly in order to make the racks kill them eventually. And plus, the racks themselves are win conditions that are reliant on these discard spells. That are reliant onto these discard spells. So that's 8 slots here that are reliant on these 21 slots to win. How many slots do I have left over? 4. I have 4 slots to kryptonite the meta with. I'd love to fit in something along the lines of the new make the card when that comes out, as well as I'd love to fit in even draw abilities like Bob is a good one, or Phyrexian Arena, but I can't fit it into the deck because it needs to discard all the time. My extra draw spell here is Infernal Tutor, and Infernal Tutor is really only Ensnaring Bridge 5 and 6. So the deck has, 6 flexible slots, and that's it? I'd prefer 10 flexible slots at this point. But it just can't be done, and I'm even cutting my land count down to 21 when it probably should be 23 in this deck. Something to consider here is that just the deck is so focused on its own game plan that even sideboarding becomes a problem. You've got a bunch of different ways to sideboard here, but nothing really. Everything's sort of general. These are basically the same cards. These are basically the same cards. These are basically the same cards. Again, you're so focused on your own game plan that you can't really interact with the opponent's game plan very much. So that being said, rogue decks are so focused on their own thing that if you can sort of be a little bit of a tempo deck and disrupt them from that, you have a chance of really screwing them over. Which is what I did. I stayed aggressive as humanly possible while trying to screw their own tempo and cause them to stumble a little bit. So my speed is twice as fast because of that. So I know that was a really long one. I wanted to show a couple different types of rogue decks, so that way we could go over a more general super archetype rather than an archetype itself. Thanks for watching and bearing through that.